Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancorb. Well, it's Season 10, Episode 3, and today's guest is guitarist, composer, and producer Michael Nielsen, whose work spans film, television, video games, records, and advertising. Michael has scored major franchises including Forza Motorsport, League of Legends, and Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. As co-owner and principal composer at Ninja Tracks, he's shaped music for blockbuster campaigns like The Mandalorian, Mad Max, John Wick, and Fast and Furious, while also collaborating with artists ranging from Selena Gomez to James Brown and Lenny Kravitz. He also hosts Big Hairy Guitars on YouTube and runs Big Hairy Sounds, focused on guitar tone and sound design. This is a great conversation about creativity, career longevity, and sound. So let's dive in with Michael Nielsen.
Always nice to see people in their natural habitat. This view is what I'm probably most used to seeing.
Yeah, I've tried other places, and the lighting is just terrible. It ends up washing out. It looks like it's like a webcam from 1999 or something like that when I do it anywhere else.
Yeah. So guitar fans of yours that are tuning in are probably curious as to where, is this a residential studio or is this a studio that you have outside of your
Yeah,
home?
this is my house now. I would say for when I started my channel, I had a separate residence that my company, we had converted the entire house to a studio. So we split two big
Yeah.
control rooms, and then we had a live room that we both attached tie lines to. So that was a more like, if you look at any of my old videos, like a cream colored fabric walls and stuff, and sort of geometric patterns and stuff in terms of the walls because it wasn't straight. And then around 2020, when everyone was working from home, I just kind of slowly kept building up my home studio because I wasn't going in or someone would be sick and then we wouldn't go in for a while and I had to keep working. So I was like, you know what? I could
Yeah.
do it from home and the results are the same. They're coming out really good. So I just kept
Yeah.
with it and did it. So, and the timing went nicely too, because this used to be my kids' like their playroom, and they got old enough to where they didn't want to leave their own rooms anymore, and they all had a computer and stuff. So it's like, great, there's an extra room
Yeah.
I could take over.
Yeah. It's the convenience of being at home is one thing, but then it's trying to work it into the family
Oh,
dynamic where
that's the truth. My wife actually just popped in. She's like, "Do you mind if I do laundry while you're on your call?" I was like, "I think it'll be fine." So if you hear slushing and beeping and stuff, it's because the washing machine is above my head.
yeah, this room happens to be in between our our normal house and our guest house, so we get a lot of traffic through here. So I have signs on either door letting folks
You're on
know that
air.
recording, yeah, recording in
I was
progress.
recording last night,
Um,
and it wasn't live though. But I was in the middle of a take, and my older son, who's 19, just came in, walks up. He's like, "Hey, Dad, give me a hug." I'm like, he's just oblivious to it's just a giant light right here. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I gotta go. I gotta pee." I'm like, "Can you do it? There's the other bathroom in the house. Did you have to come into this one?"
yeah,
Yeah, so it's
yeah,
tricky, but it's a trade-off. I love not having to drive half hour or 40 minutes to a studio and then 40 minutes back, and losing 2 hours in the day is tough when you're commuting to a place,
right,
especially when I feel anyway that the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, I'm in a dead sprint of work, of trying to get as much work done as possible, and never can, it's like a treadmill of trying to catch up.
yeah. So your fans might want to know, like, what does that consist of? Because I think we're all aware that you do studio work, and then there's a lot of different hats that you wear underneath the umbrella of being in the studio with a guitar on. It might be interested to go through some of those different phases, uh,
Yeah, well,
however you want to.
um, I'll tie it into sort of my history. So I was 19 and I was at UCLA studying history. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I liked history. figured I maybe I'd be a teacher or something. There was no chance of me being a musician. I just figured that that's not something that people do. I don't even know how, at the time, maybe it's like you have to go to Sunset Strip and have long hair and be do drugs and stuff. And it just, that wasn't me. I was a short hair, like indoor kid. So, um,
Yeah.
I met a guy named Brian Tyler, and we became fast friends because I remember our conversation. He was an amazing drummer, and I was a shredder guitar player. So a bunch of our friends were like, we got to put you together." And so we're sitting there talking. It's kind of like new musicians do, where you're like, you kind of like, okay, I'm cool. Are you cool? And he's like, and I like pop music too. And I was like, oh, I do too, because a lot of times when we were growing up, you liked one kind of music and you hated the other kind of music. I loved all
Yeah.
kinds of music. And he goes, well, and by pop music, I mean, like Toto stuff. And I was like, dude, I'd never in my life met another Toto guy. And so we hit it
Right.
off, and it was like, yeah, it was all the musicianship guys, the liner notes of like, oh, it's the Porcaros and Luthers and Landows and all that. So this guy had a different mindset. He was like, I'm going to be a composer. And I was like, oh, you could just decide to do that. And he did. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. He's a great composer. He uh, did all the Fast and Furious movies and a bunch of Marvel stuff. And so we worked together for years, and we ended up splitting off as he started becoming a composer. I became a music producer, a pop music producer specifically, and was doing a lot of like Disney Channel kids and stuff like that. And this was fully pulling me out of my wheelhouse, which was like rock. But I have all these '80s pop roots. But I was thrown in all this new like R&B stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. How do you play R&B? How do you write R&B? And how do you mix rap music and
Right.
all this? So it was a real education and real journey, just constantly being thrown into new scenarios, and you just have to do it. There was no like, well, this is not me, and you can't have a huge ego about like they're not respecting my vision and stuff. It's not about that. So I never had big singles radio success as a pop music writer or producer, but I landed a lot of TV and film placements. And that was one of those
Yeah.
things where it's like, oh, I'm better at that. And that sort of transitioned me over to writing for film and TV and advertising and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I did that from the time I was about 30 till now. I have a company with my best friend. It's called Ninja Tracks, and we've been writing, scoring video games like Forza Motorsport and Splinter Cell, and we've done thousands of movie trailers and commercials and things. So again, it's those scenarios where when a client calls and your livelihood depends on it, and they say, "Can you do like a mariachi music?" You're like, "Of course I could write mariachi music. I'm a master of mariachi music," and then you figure it out. So I don't know, maybe like a little over 10 years ago, um, styles had been to the point where I was just writing orchestral music. That's all I was doing. Is we had big orchestras recording our stuff and choirs and that. But deep down, I was like, I want to play guitar, and I need a reason to play
Right.
guitar. Um, and on any of the composing work I did, I'd play guitar for maybe 3 seconds at a time. It'd be like ding, 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 and you're like, that's the guitar part. And I'm like, I'm gonna learn
Right.
songs. So I decided like that's why I'm gonna do a YouTube channel, is so that I have a reason to practice and a reason to play
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there was people like Phil McKnight. I was like, I love watching him, and Fluff and Pete Thorne, and I mean, those were probably the three I remember where I was going like, that's the model of what I want to do in
Right.
my YouTube. Um, and just started doing the nerdy stuff that I did anyway, which is like okay, which microphone sounds best? Which preamp sounds best on a guitar cab? And
Hmm.
getting all my friends' preamps, and then we A, B, C, D, E, F them until you're like, all right, I have an opinion now. I don't have to just get it from a magazine or some forum that's like a Neve is what is a Neve
Right.
versus an API or you know, any of that kind of stuff. So, and I wanted to share that on my YouTube. So that's kind of where I live in a balancing act now of uh, the real nerdy stuff no one watches, in the scheme of YouTube. But that's what I want to do. So, I do a little of that, and then I try to do some stuff that people are into, and I stumble on something every once in a while. So, sorry for the long monologue or story, but
No, no,
that's how I got here.
it's that's that, yeah, it's kind of what I was after. Is just kind of the trajectory because there are a lot of us that started off when the pop music of the day was the guy, the original guitar heroes, that circa 86 to 89 thing where he had Paul Gilbert and Reb Beach
Hmm.
and all the W bands, Whitesnake, Winger, and just all these amazing players that were wearing spandex and the big hair and that kind of stuff. And if you felt like that didn't represent what you were capable of doing, then you kind of a lot of guys I would hear were interested in the studio stuff. They would because they maybe all have already been into pop music and they were checking out it's Michael Thompson, Michael Landau, Steve Lukather, or even going back further, Dean Parks, Larry
Hmm.
Carlton. So it's kind of cool to hear that was for me that was the same thing. I was really excited about the studio guys. They were my first real guitar heroes until I got into Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Eric Johnson. But in the early days, the studio guys were my absolute heroes.
I'm sure it was the same way with you. You listened to something and you became obsessed with it. And you're like, this is so good. And then at some point you realize like the music video is not the same guy playing on the record. And then
Right?
that
Yeah.
happens the second time and you're like, wait a minute, it's the same guy on the record. Or, I was listening to Chicago, the band Chicago, and you're like, geez, Louise, the
Yeah.
guitar player in Chicago might be the best in the world. And then you watch it live, and you're like, that's different. You're like, oh, it's because Lukather was playing the solos on the Chicago records, and then it was Dan
Yeah.
Huff, and he's like, oh, because you got the best guitar players in the world playing on everything, and the best drummers come in and play on Michael Jackson records, and
Yeah. And it also changed your sensibilities that would be helpful later for the more mature player. Like I remember hearing "I'll Be Over You" by Toto, really short solo, but just incredibly melodic, such great tone, and you kind of realize that there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's probably more helpful in the grand scheme of things on a pop record to play the melody of the tune, the vocal or to hint at the vocal melody. And that was a huge lesson that I learned is, man, I love that solo, but it was so
Mhm.
short, maybe 8 bars, maybe even shorter. But it was really cool to hear how players with great tone could have such a great reverence for the song that even if you just A B or if you just soloed the guitar solo, you'd be like you get a real flavor of what the tune was about.
I totally agree with you, and that's one of my favorite guitar solos, top five of all time, and musical moments in pop
Yeah,
music. And the tone and the touch and the articulation. If you talk about phrasing and that, there's a couple guys that are
yeah,
so good at that, and it's a little bit of a meme now or a sort of a musical joke, but the Top Gun theme that Steve Stevens played
yeah,
is a
yeah,
masterclass in phrasing and touch and articulation because
yeah,
it's a simple melody that if the wrong person played it, that was going to be lame. But the way he built it up and just and that how his vibrato got more extreme and each pass through was slightly different. Sometimes it was a whammy bar vibrato. Sometimes there'd be dives and be slides, and I mean, it's absolutely amazing. There's a reason it was so successful. I mean, I don't know if Steve
Yeah,
Stevens gets enough credit. I mean, he's had an amazing career, but he's one of the best ever
yeah,
also.
yeah. I was really enamored with the guys that had a really for the '80s a very progressive sound. You know, the chorus, the tri-stereo chorus, the Dino My Piano, this
Yeah.
thing. I would read these things, and the general consensus was, well, okay, Bob Bradshaw was doing it for the American guys, or Pete Cornish was doing it for the
Hmm.
British guys. But just I was in love with the idea of having the big spaceship behind you, the big huge rack, with the 412 cabinets and all that kind of. I just thought, oh my god, that sound. Well, I was enamored. I like the guys like Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and Keith Richards and some of the more organic tones. I was really in love with the big stereo guitar rig. I just thought that was just heaven on earth.
Same here. And I think, obviously, I've probably thought about it way too much of why I'm so enamored with that. But I think it was a perfect storm of, being in that young teen years. Technology was increasing and changing so fast, where even if you just zoom out of why there are rack gear, it went from you go to a studio, and if you think about like the old Muscle Shoals studio or something, when seeing Elvis or
Yeah,
the Beach Boys go in and everyone set up and they played, and then there's like just a console and they hit tape and they're done. Okay, that's gone. And then all of a sudden, studios were more like the Millennium Falcon, the cockpit of that, with lights and
right.
lasers and stuff. And it was like, oh, look at this. It's going shoo, 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 like Knight Rider. All of that happening at once and
Yeah,
Transformers and stuff. And then sonically, it was the same thing. I always equate it to like a Michael Bay movie where there's just all of this front and back and top and bottom and space and three dimensions and stuff. Um, I think we've lost a little of that. I definitely think there like that peak coming from the '70s richness of organic into that high tech hi-fi '80s. There was a crossover point where it was just perfect. '90s is its own thing. That's great. And then once everything sort of shifted to Pro Tools and ADATs and digital in the late '90s to 2000s, it was a real stinker time of some, not all of them, but a lot of bad recordings, bad mastering. And, I think we're coming back to it. And it's interesting to see younger people what they vibe with now, and like a lot of really organic effects and mixing digital. There's no loyalty to anything. It's like if this sounds good, I'm going to use it. Whereas me, I'll be like, oh, I don't know, I don't like that brand. That brand name is that's for lame people. They just don't care. They're like, if it sounds cool, I'm going to make something cool with it.
yeah. It seems like there's a big epiphany that you go through when you, especially in the modern age now that we can hear all these isolated tracks of things, and what you thought a particular guitar tone consisted of. When you listen to the isolated track, you kind of go, well, man, that's not anything what I suspected. And then the other thing is when you start going down the rabbit hole of, okay, I'm gonna, because I've been doing the Gilmore thing for a long time. The gear that you think is going to get you there is not doesn't get you across the finish line, because there's a lot of things that were happening in the studio with EQ and placement of things in the mix and just some sonic sweeteners, and it gets to be very frustrating when you have heroes that you're trying to emulate, whether it be Edward Van Halen or David Gilmour or whomever. That the one consideration was the engineer that you know made that thing
Yeah, how
happen.
about I mean, if I just stay in the
Something,
'80s, the guy is Bob Bradshaw. Like he
right?
created that sound, and then what happened is the producers would say, "Well, I need it to sound like this," and the players were like, "Shoot, I got to get a rig that has four different chorus options and delays and reverbs and stuff." That's because, wait, did I say Bob Bradshaw? I meant to say Bob
Yeah,
Clearmountain, the mixer Bob Clearmountain.
yeah, the mastering
Yeah. So
Bob
I mean,
Clearmountain. Yeah,
I mean, like I would say, like 1984 is when it really like peaked. Bob Clearmountain. A lot of Bobs around in the rack world. They all brought their thing.
yeah,
Um, so Bob Clearmountain, like if you take a listen to Huey Lewis and the News Sports, which is mega album,
yeah,
just maybe right below Thriller in that era.
yeah.
Um, you could tell those guys, they're like an R&B band, like a blue-eyed soul band, and using just like a
Hmm.
bassman. But then you could hear that Bob fully went on like, all right, here's a full eventide micro pitch on top of that, and echoes and delays and all that. So like he was creating the rack sound at the console. And then after the fact, they're like, oh, I need a Bob Bradshaw rack to recreate that. And then it sort of starts
Right.
cycling forward with that. And then
Yeah.
a studio guitarist comes in that's young, that's like, that's the sound I have. And then the old guys go, oh, I got to get one of those too to stay relevant. And it just kind of steamrolled until Nirvana shows up and just breaks everything.
And even with Nirvana, there's a I think people get a sense that it was just kind of haphazardly thrown together. But I think Kurt and Butch Vig really spent some time working on those tones. I don't think he just grabbed any guitar and any amp. I think they really set out. I mean, I don't. This is just theory and supposition, but I don't think it was as accidental as one might think. I think they were because those guitars had a
Hmm.
thing to them that you can't just grab gear off the or grab pawn shop gear and make that sound.
I totally agree. When I listen to that album, it's hi-fi. It is big and
Yeah,
wide and stereo and deep. It's in one of those crossover points where you're coming to the 80s and the 90s, and the crossover is perfect of
yeah, yeah,
all of those
yeah,
elements. Their follow-up album, I think that one's In Utero. Um,
yeah,
that one I didn't love because where I was, we all kind of are listening for things when you're especially going through these eras. Um, it was too lo-fi. I was like, ugh. That one sounded like a mess to me, a hot mess. I loved
yeah,
the energy of Nirvana and like Appetite for Destruction. When you get a band that's so visceral and
yeah.
energy like just oozing out of it, and you could capture it in a you capture that in a bottle. I think that's one of those albums like that first Nirvana album, the first Guns N' Roses album, like those have it. Even something I see you have a Yes shirt. I mean, my favorite. Like Trevor Rabin shows up and he has this knack of being able to like energize stuff, but with all the fidelity and three dimensions in the world, at the same time.
Yeah, as much as I love Steve Howe, I was just thrilled with Trevor Rabin just because I loved his approach to the guitar, the way his concept of tone, and just owner of Lonely Heart by itself is just what a sonic tour de
There's
force.
so
I mean,
much.
all the different tones that are in there.
Yeah, it's kicked in the door like the Kool-Aid man who's like, "Oh, here, let me show you guys what's up." Like, where did this come from?
Yeah. There's also a track on 902 or 90125 called Hearts. It has, I think, at least two solos on it, but man, it just such amazing playing and just very great tone. And so yeah, we could go on and on about these
Yeah.
guys, but it's interesting to hear how we kind of the entry point for these different players. And it's exciting to hear when somebody is able to. I know you just released a new album, but you're able to do all the things that you love to do, the gear stuff, coming up with stuff for soundtracks and television and film. It's nice to have all those different things to keep you interested and satisfied.
Yeah, and the album was one of those things where I had never done a guitar album, and I I both love guitar albums and then don't. So like I love guitar albums, but I only listen to one or two tracks, and then I'm like, "Phew, that's cool. I'm burned out. That's Totally good. Totally it.
Right.
There's very few guitar albums that I could listen to like more than one track at a time. Um,
Right.
these days, especially. So my goal was to like make something that you can listen to more than one or two tracks. And it's really for me, all of the songs, I think most of the songs were started from gear demo ideas. And then I went back and
Right.
I fleshed them out. And I hired a drummer who's just one of my favorites. His name's Aaron Sterling. He used to live a couple blocks away, and then he moved to Nashville. And he's like, I'd say he's like the Tom Bukovac of drummers out there. Just
Oh yeah.
unbelievable. Where send it to him, and like 20 minutes later, it comes back, and he's like, how's this? Here you go. Here's two takes that are unreal. Like, oh, okay. Thanks. That was fast. Um, yeah. So there was that, and it was a little all over the map. So I kept trying to hone it in and to make the album be something and not just a collection of like nonsense of like something really heavy Pantera-ishy and then something Eric Johnson,
Right.
Sean Lane sort of vibe over here. And I think that journey was really trying to figure out like what my style is. And
Hmm.
the more I write, the more that would sort of come to the surface. Uh, I think I think especially these days, if someone is a new guitar player, or if they've played for 30 years at a certain level, and maybe they have more time in their life now, and they're like, I want to get to here.
Hmm.
That's the same as sort of you have. There's this huge chasm to cross from being able to play some AC/DC stuff or just a couple riffs and to be able to be a voice on guitar. It's pretty monumental, and it you're not helped at all by there being such an easy access to tabs, and every lesson on the world in the world is on YouTube, and any song you could think of you could get three versions of someone showing you how to do it. That really keeps you down here. And that look, I'm also a victim of that, if you want to call it that. So when you write, there's nothing telling you what you're going to play or how you can play it, so you have to come up with something. So I would love to be able to play a solo like Nuno Betancourt. And sometimes I would approach something and be like, I'm going to do a solo like Nuno Betancourt. And then very quickly, I'm like, oh, this is going nowhere. I cannot, you're like trying to shoehorn in a
Right.
fast lick or some cool lick that you had an idea of. And you have to be just self aware enough to go, like, all right, let me throw that out and take what I can out of it, and that's when you start to figure out who you are. And you're like, all right,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
can pick fast a little at a time. Can't Paul Gilbert these things, you know? Um, and I could legato stuff. Little melodic moments are what I'm really good at. Um, 4 minute solos are not what I'm good at, you know? So it just, I'd
Yeah.
rather sit and write a melody or something. That kind of thing. But it
Yeah.
helps
And
build
to
your
that end, I
character, your
think.
personality.
Yeah. Yeah. To that end, I think that that's why so many guitar player or not your wife or my wife or anybody could listen to your version of Boys of Summer and go, "Damn, that's
Oh,
really
thank you.
nice." I mean that was I loved all the tracks, but that was one I thought, man, that's such a cool tune. It made me, love the song again. I remember exactly when that came out and the impact it had. I don't.
That's
It
that's
was
Mike
kind of
Campbell
the
again, right?
zeitgeist.
You're like, oh,
Yeah,
whoever Don Henley's guitar player is amazing. It's like, oh yeah, it's Mike Campbell.
yeah, yeah. So I think that that's probably the if there was one nugget to take away from our conversation is that it's great to have these heroes, but it's when you realize what separates you from them or what the things that you take from them, all these different players, that makes your style. So sometimes it's the limitations of maybe not being able to play as fast as Nuno or whatever, it makes you go down a different direction and you find the musicality there, and you're in, it's still very satisfying because it's truly who you are.
I don't know if you
Or maybe there's things that you have more technique than Mike Campbell. Obviously, you love Mike Campbell, but you have a lot more facility. But sometimes you may pull that back to try to get to something that's more,
well,
visceral or
like,
more emotive.
okay, so you have dug deep in Dave Gilmour, right? You
Yeah,
probably can in your sleep can pull out some Gilmourisms and stuff. So there's
yeah,
guys like that with me that I have to if I'm going to do something on my own, I have to consciously like pull away from that. But even still, funny listening to
yeah,
my album, I go like, "That's Sean Lane, that's Eric Johnson, that's Joe Satriani, that's Steve Vai, that's Steve Lukather, that's all the Steves." But I guess at the end of the day, when it becomes the soup, it starts to take on its own life. I think
yeah,
maybe by like my third
yeah,
album, maybe I would start to have less of that effect. Um,
yeah. I think I think that's the greatest byproduct of what you do, and that sounds so cool to me, is that you're taking one creative thing and it's also feeding this creative thing. You're doing gear reviews and you're coming up with some interesting ideas, and that feeds your muse for, I mean, that's, I can't think of a better way of doing it because you're not putting your pressure on yourself as a writer in that moment. You're just trying to come up with something cool that showcases the strengths of the gear, and then as a byproduct, oh wow, I got some really great ideas here to as a springboard, and now you're in it, and now it's the what's the word, it's the artistry comes in, knowing, okay, I need a B section here, or I've got a cool modulation happening here, or maybe this is a cool modal thing where I can switch between Dorian and whatever. It's really cool. It takes the pressure off of being a writer.
yeah, thanks. And yeah, it's the YouTube thing was interesting because certainly it has evolved a lot. I think my the writing was always good, but guitar, instrumental guitar writing is different than writing music. You have to be so aware of so many elements of the idiom, and there's so many different ways. You can't just, I mean, you can just play a melody all the way through and go like, ta-da, there it is, and maybe chunk down some like 1/5 chords along with the bass line or something. But by the fourth time you do that, uh, like, okay, I got it. It loses character at some point. Like that is one kind of thing.
Yeah,
So doing the YouTube videos, like, and when I get a piece of gear in, I think of it as like, all right, this thing probably has a song in it or some idea in it. And as soon as you
yeah,
plug in, if you're not thinking about the gear and it just has some inspiration it brings, that's when, man, it's so easy. But if it doesn't, oh, then doing a review or a video on it, it's really tough. Um, and the trick is like, I don't want to, what's the phrase? I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. So just because it didn't bring me inspiration doesn't mean that, like, if you had the same thing, you might go like, whoa, I wrote 5 songs based on this thing. And they could be
yeah,
amazing. So there has been one or two times where I had a piece of gear that I thought personally, I was like, this stinks. I sort of hate it, but let me just remove that. And this is something I had to learn as a commercial composer. If a client calls and says, hey, we love this song, this is what we want to use for our ad campaign. We want you to take the song and turn it into something we could use for the campaign and write it or an orchestral version and stuff. I don't have the luxury of saying, like, guys, I don't like that song. I have to pull that away and I have to figure out. It's like a know your enemy kind of thing. Like, why don't I like it? What is that? So let me at least approach it from that angle of like something about it I don't like, but let me figure out why, and then come in that way. And when you to know someone is to love someone, as they say also. So when you sort of figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, I see what they were going for. unless it was complete trash, which is rare these days. Most gear is pretty good. Uh, when you come in and understand it, what they were going for, you get somewhere, and you go, okay. And there's a
Yeah.
certain sense of like accomplishment to like, I got to the end on this thing that was more challenging than if you gave me a Les
Yeah.
Paul and a Plexi, like this is going to be really easy versus some other
Yeah.
tricky thing. And the funny thing is, on the two videos that I could think of that I didn't like the piece of gear, it was flooded with, "This is amazing. This is the best sound you've ever had. This is happens all the time." So that was a education to me
Yeah.
of like, all right, it's not necessarily about me. I'm just going to try and show these in the best light, and
Yeah.
and be honest about it. I don't fluff up these things that I think are not for me. So I'll just kind of be a little more medium about the stuff. Like, here's what it does. And I don't have a good
Right.
poker face, so it should be obvious. But if I love something, I'll also gush over it and be like, I
Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah. It would be interesting to hear how your relationships come to fruition with gear manufacturers. I'm sure that I would think that there are people that are reaching out to you saying, "Hey, I saw this thing that you're doing. We'd really like you to check out this new piece of gear." And then also, does does your career engender you being involved in all the different the guitar summits and the NAMM shows and Gear Fest and all the things that happen throughout the year that are gear centric
A little bit.
gatherings?
I haven't figured out how to make YouTube, like, we'll say, profitable. So I still have
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
job. So in a sense, I work two jobs, which is why, like, from the minute I wake up, it's like go go go, because I love doing the YouTube stuff. So I want to keep doing that, but I'm a little blocked versus someone that is only doing that full time, where they can take
Yeah.
trips for weeks on end and get a bunch of content and stuff. So occasionally I'll let myself do that if it's really, if it's, well, for instance, I went to Sweetwater Guitar Fest this couple months ago, this past year, and I went there as a representative of like Synergy and the boutique amp distribution, because I have a great relationship with those guys. They make amazing stuff. And Dave Friedman was going, and Dave was like, "Hey, we'll go a day early and we'll hit up the best restaurants in Detroit." And that I was like, "Okay, I'm sold. This would be super fun." And I've been friends with Dave a long time, and we have a great time together. And so that was a blast. I'll be going to NAMM, and yeah, I mean, I have a really good relationship with a lot of the manufacturers. It it can be a little tricky to navigate sometimes, but like I said, everyone makes really good stuff, so at least I don't have to um, lie to
Right.
anybody, or you don't have to send stuff back. Um, and I don't well, I say this, but I don't usually work on things that are like $500, for instance, like an amp that's $500 or a guitar that's $500. Not that there's
Right.
anything wrong with it, because
Right.
it's kind of the opposite. Like, I played some $500 guitars that I thought were unreal for $500. Um, and then I just did a review of an amp that's like a mini Dumble. It's like a Champ or a Princeton sort of thing that they did all the Dumble mods to, and it's $600, and it sounded amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that threshold is, the ceiling is lowering significantly, but my relationships are
Mm.
mostly with sort of the higher gain generation that are still going, of like the Saldanos, Friedmans, Bad Cat Rev, things like that. They make amazing. Everyone makes amazing stuff. The hard here's the hardest part is when you find something you love, like 2 or 3 weeks later, there's something else I have to try and fall in love with and figure out. But I just want to keep playing this
Right.
one. Like, can I eat this?
Right. Right.
Like, no, more cake. Take another cake.
Uh, yeah. The folks that really follow your channel probably want to get into the the minutia, or the, as some say, the cork sniffing aspect of all these different things. So it would seem like that could be represent a large portion of your time, just trying to stay on top of responding to folks and being accessible within reason. Because it amazes me when I see some really great stuff by you and some other folks, and I look at the number of views, and I mean, I'd be scrolling for minutes just reading all the different comments about things. Is that a challenging thing to stay on top of, to try to connect with folks, or is it, or maybe I'm not reading closely enough what they're writing? Is it not necessarily needing a
Yeah,
response?
I try to. It would be impossible for me to respond to everything. I remember at one point, like
Yeah.
I had sent, this is years ago, I'd sent Pete Thorne a message, and I was like, he never replied back to me. How dare, how dare he do that? And then now it's like, oh, of course, that's like it's impossible. And then you've got Instagram messengers and Facebook messengers, and you're like, what happens often is someone will ask me a good question, and I don't want to just fart out a quick reply. I'm like, I got to think about that. And then a day later, I'll be like, oh no, where was that? That was somewhere. Email, text, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Keep trying to find it, but um, yeah, it's. I do my best. I have a Patreon thing that I was trying to do. I'm not sure I'll keep doing it, but I'm fairly accessible. Um, for me, I just ask that someone respects my time as a human, and like, how about a hello in front of the email? Like, I've had
Right.
people ask me like, "Hey, man, can you just like do this thing this is going to take 8 hours of my life to like draw a schematic for you and learn your stuff and come like, I can't,
Right.
no."
They want like some sort of schematic of like the way you've signal chain for some sort of video that you did. They want to
No,
see
for
how it's all
theirs.
laid
They're
out and
like,
all.
I have all this stuff. Can you like
Oh,
can
they
you
want you.
show me how to wire it up?
Oh,
Like, nope. That's
nope.
not at all. Like, I don't want to learn your stuff. I have to learn my stuff.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, was that a did it come naturally to you? Because it seems like when people are seeing what you're doing now, their assumption would be, my gosh, this guy's got it together with the way his videos look and they sound, and all that kind of. Or was it something that came easy to you to put together a branding, so to speak, or was it something that evolved over time?
That totally evolved. I mean, I loved digital drawing, like tablet drawing and Photoshop. And I went through an era before I was playing guitar where I was like just drawing like comic book kind of stuff, especially when I had little kids, and you're stuck at 10 at night, just like, I got 2 hours of sitting here trying to get this kid to bed, or waiting or something. A lot of waiting. So I understood editing and that, but I did not understand cameras at all. That is just this whole another thing. And
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
so many videos in my first year or two that are choppy, and everything is in focus except me. Everything behind me is in focus. Dark lighting. I look yellow. I mean, it's just such a journey. But at least I knew the audio was good. So I'm like, okay, that's everything else is fine. And then just little by little, and someone asked me one day, they're like, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. I have a question about a camera." I'm like, I know nothing. I would literally try a setting and try
Yeah.
another setting, and then you look back and like, which is better? Okay, we'll keep going in this direction. And then I wrote down the settings because that's where it's gonna stay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you do you like to keep the workflow in your studio kind of minimalistic? It seems like the guys that I talk to like to have a workflow where it's a pretty straightforward thing, a mic into a interface into their DAW of choice, and then the camera. They try to keep things where once their content is created, the next step of getting it all edited together is pretty
I would
straightforward.
love
Was
to
that
say
was that a hard thing
yes.
to achieve to
I'm
float?
I am an agent of chaos in my own little world. So it goes from there's barely a place to walk, and a lot of stuff is experiments. Like I was at Dave Friedman's, and he goes, "Hey, I've got this 212 cab. I put an EV, a vintage EV in it, and a black label, the Zach Wild signature EV. When you're standing in front of a 212 cab, you can't discern which speaker is which." He goes, "You should do a video and
Right.
see if they match." Like it's like that's a great idea. So it's always easier said than done. I get home like, oh crud, I got to move everything and wire and the other two
Right.
mics and everything has to be even. And then I have another job to do, and then I've got this wired over here. So it's always chaos. So if anything that's gotten organized is I've tried before I start a video to have a sort of game plan structurally, because it used to take me 3 or 4 days to edit a video, which is just I used to when I started, I thought, it'd be great if I could do like 2 videos a month. That'll be really cool. And that was sort of the culture of YouTube videos of like you'd get a video and that was the video for a week or so. And then now it's not that. Now it's like every day someone wants a new video, or every 2 days. So I've been putting out a video a week, probably, for the most part. And unless when I have a video game, like I've been scoring, I mentioned Ford to Motorsport, that's such a huge undertaking along with my other work that I have just like, I'm out. I can't do anything for a couple months. Um, but for the past year or so, I've managed to squeeze in like a video almost every week.
Yeah.
And I started doing live chat, which is really fun because that's another place where people could ask a question and stuff. And it's easier to give a long answer. Sometimes even a simple question that I want to answer in the comments of a YouTube video is just like, I can't type out 7 paragraphs. It won't make sense. It's easier just to talk through it.
Yeah. And do you find that if you were to do just guitar orientated stuff where it wasn't necessarily a gear thing, would do you like the idea of doing the Oxbox thing with amp heads, or do you find it
Yeah. So
just
in
to
terms
make
of
your life easier to do, like,
the guitar thing was more of a, in terms of signal path and stuff, is trying to find some consistency. What I found, because everything was changing so much in the early days of my channel, and then I was working, and so someone would call and say, "Hey, we want to like a Jack White tone." You're like, "Great." Miking that up, you find this kind of thing, and then the next time they're like, "Cool, we want a Hendrix thing," and then or they want a super heavy, like wall of sound, dual rectifiers. So I was changing stuff so much that there was no consistency by the time I reset up my mics and I would get a head
hmm
and go like, "I think this head is really bright," and it's just because I the microphone was over, like pointed a few degrees in the other
yeah,
direction. So the best thing for me has been really um, the load box stuff. I don't use an aux box. I had gone through a series of videos that I made of ABCing all of the load boxes, which was really helpful to kind of understand what the load box bring to the sound, and then to be able to find the ones you like.
yeah,
And I've heard amazing stuff from aux users, but for what I wanted to do, I settled on the Fryette Power Station, and more recently, I've mostly been using the Two Notes Reload 2. So that takes you have your amplifier, and instead of going through the cabinet, you go into this load box, and out of the
yeah,
load box, it goes into the computer, and in the computer, you put these impulse responses, which are captures of that cab. So I've been doing these IRs, they're called, and I've been doing them semi-professionally too because we've sold them on Two Notes, and I've made IRs for companies like the ones inside the Soldano X88R are IRs that I made. I've made them for a lot of different companies. So my cab and my IRs are almost identical. There's no real difference, and I know that every time I plug in to my load box and my IR, now I could determine what the amp sounds like. So if someone goes, hey, this amp sounds amazing. And I go, yeah, it sounds amazing. I feel like it's missing some lower mids. Now I have a reference point for this stuff. Whereas before, everything was like, yeah, it sounds amazing. Mm, this one sounds amazing. Totally different, but they all sound
Yeah.
amazing because who knows? Um, so yeah, I have like one IR I always start with, and then if it's slightly off, I'll go to, just a little tweaks here and there. But that consistency of being able to just plug the amp into a load box is great. Not to mention my cabinet, a 412 cabinet's right there. So to try and record a song
Yeah.
in time is near impossible. So I could record that. Um, when I do the walkthroughs and like, let's turn some knobs and here's this, I'll go to the cab just as a sort of reality check and make sure like sometimes a little extra nuance comes through by miking up a cab. I mean, this
Hmm.
still IRs aren't perfect. They're real close, but a real cab in a perfect world, we should all have an ISO room with real cabs, which is, impossible.
Yeah.
So yeah, the IRs are great. Um, like the digital stuff is great. It still doesn't quite replace everything. Everything digital is so good. It's so good. It's 98% perfect. But when you stack up all the
Yeah.
98%, you're like, well, we're left with a pretty big gap at the end of this. That, if let's say maybe you choose to have a tube preamp instead of a digital preamp, well, now you start closing the gap down, and it's okay to have certain parts of your signal be digital as long as you keep some of the other stuff mixing and matching. And that,
Right.
for me, that's where I'm at with it currently.
Yeah. It seems like the consistency that people must be having, because I see more folks that have a really good sound and it looks great. But what's been interesting is that I've noticed that people have certain identities, and I think that translates to when you're checking out something, when you see somebody's brand that you recognize, whether it be you or Pete Thorne or whomever, Andy at Reverb, you click on it because it's like, oh, I wonder, you're kind of tuning into their channel. Hey, I wonder what's going on with them. Oh, wow, they're reviewing this piece of gear that I've been thinking about. But it's been interesting to see how people gravitate to things when they're scrolling, because you may only have 10 minutes at Sprouts or Whole Foods when you're waiting in line and you're scrolling on your phone and you get your earbuds in or whatever. But in that 10 minutes, you might be able to consume something. But it seems predicated on something that's catching you with a thumbnail or whatever, which is a whole nother thing that's a mystery to me, how all
Oh,
that
that part's just
works.
so miserable in it. I was just complaining to my wife about it a couple of days ago. It used to be where we were all miserable making the thumbnail, but now YouTube, they kind of want you to do a test. So they want you to make three thumbnails, and then
Yes.
you put those out, and then you figure out which the one that works the best. So now it's triple pain of making thumbnails. But yeah, the branding part is interesting, and you know, uh, it's a constant thought. I know for myself, like I've gone into restaurants that I've gone to for 10 years, and well, I'll walk in with a buddy that went there twice, and the host will go like, "Hey," to my buddy, and I'm like, "I've been coming here for 10 years. I just kind of have an unrecognizable face." So I was like, I have to kind of keep it consistent so anyone will know who I am. There was there was a great comment early on in one of my videos, and they go, "Oh, I watched this video for about 3 minutes, and I thought I was watching Pete Thorne, but I thought, man, Pete Thorne has really let himself go." And I was like, all
What?
right, got it. So then I started wearing a hat. I mean, like, because some days my hair, I would be at the end of a work day, and I'm just like, oh, this is what my hair looks like, and I'm like, well, if I
Right.
wear a hat, and let's say I have to
Yeah.
splice in some audio from the next day, like I could just put on my hat and a black
Yes.
shirt and I could shoot a video across 3 days. But it looks like this is all I wear ever. And, you know,
Well, but I think for the standpoint of what you've created on your YouTube channel, I think it's brilliant because that's your trade. You know, if you did a little watermark on in the corner of your thing, and it was a caricature of you with the hat and the glasses and the black, people would know instantly. So that's like the
right.
McDonald's thing, or it's like the Nike swoosh. You've got a brand based on what, and for you, it was a pragmatic thing of, okay, if I've got a bad hair day and I need to,
I mean, that's where
it's,
it
this is
started.
more
There's a light
consistent.
right here that shines down that makes the top of my forehead look all white. And so it's like this blocks my
Yeah.
eyes and everything. It's like I always tell my wife, the more of my face I could cover, the happier everyone else will be. So it's like, that's great. We'll just cover it up. And then it's like you said, it kind of becomes the character. Like when I go to Sweetwater and am representing brands or myself for my channel or something like that, I always put on the hat and glasses. I mean, it's what I look like going to Starbucks anyway. So, you know, I'll have a different T-shirt on. I'll have a Van Halen shirt on. That's the difference. And fight it. And honestly, as much as I complain about the three thumbnail thing that YouTube does, that sort of helps solidify that and find out. Because sometimes I'll just put one of the product, one of me, one of this, and sadly, the ones that click most often are the ones that are like, you know, like the stupid face and a product. But you know, it gets the attention
Right.
in a row of 10 tiny thumbnails.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a question for you. Like you
Yeah. Yeah.
are
Yeah.
an experienced live guitar master. Live guitar is a new thing for me that I am sort of exploring. That's my next thing of like, all right, I can sit in a studio anywhere and I could play and work up stuff. But like playing live is it's like a meditation where you're like, oh, there's no retake on this. And then if you make a mistake, you have to own it and keep moving forward. And it's a totally different sort of exercise. Um, when you're preparing to go out live, like, do you have mindset things you do, or are you just so prepared? Or you're just like, hey, I've done this so many times, it's not even a big deal.
Well, it's a dual thing because the guitar part of it is more of a thing where if my wife woke me up in the middle of the night, handed me this guitar and said, play the solo to Dogs off the Animals album, I could do it. It's not an issue. That's second nature. But the mindset thing is singing Roger Waters and David Gilmour stuff. That's really where the challenge becomes because you kind of have to really embody and I'll try to keep this a brief answer. You have to really embody the story of what you're singing, get into the pathos of, because the Pink Floyd songs are really pretty deep, you know? I never get nervous because I realize that it's a very specialized thing. It's like I've put so much time into this that I'm I'm the best qualified at that moment to walk in front of an audience and do this. The one thing I would say for anybody that would be a real challenge, I'm not saying that it would be more difficult than Far Beyond the Sun by Yngwie, but it's very, very challenging is to open a show where there's a couple thousand people, the keyboard player is playing a big G minor chord, and you have to start Shine On You Crazy Diamond and go through that whole thing. Because it's kind of like having a pair of rollerblades on ice. You know, my rig coming through the house PA, it's so clear and articulate that they can hear every little thing. If I accidentally touch but if I thought about that, I'd be paralyzed.
Yeah.
I just have to play it. I've played "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" a million times, and even those four notes. If you really thought about the time that's in, we play to a click track in the ear, but the click track doesn't come until the third set of those four notes, and that cues the rest of the band in for us. So it's completely free time for me So but I have to just get into this meditative state where you can't play those notes too fast and you can't play them too slow. And it seems like, well, how hard can that be? It's really fucking hard. If all eyes are on
Yeah.
you, there's a spotlight and there's smoke and all this stuff, and there's a big 16-foot video screen, and the whole thing is the video actually doesn't start until you hit the first bent note. But all that to say is, I don't think about, I don't really get nervous, but there are things that I have to do to try to not be aware that there's an audience out
Well,
there.
it's funny too with the guitar. This thing that we are so passionate about is it's these tiny, minute movements. Guitar strings are so
Yeah,
small, and we like, should I use a nines or nine and a half? So I like, this is how minute, how small detail in these
right.
tiny little movements.
Yeah,
It's like crazy trying to pick up rice with giant chopsticks that we do. So it's really, to toot our own horns. If anyone who plays guitar, it's pretty miraculous that it works ever.
yeah,
Pretty amazing. And then to do that in front of 1,000 people or in front of 10 people
yeah,
staring at you, like, here you go, do it.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah. You know what I mean? It's that the things that we say to ourselves, or this inner dialogue that we have with ourselves, is just kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I agree with that. And it's interesting being in LA and traveling in some of the circles that I travel in and stuff. Even school, my kids' school, you turn around, and you're like, oh, hello, rock star. It's like they're everywhere. Legends. So I've met so many people through many different avenues, and they're people. They're all people.
Yeah.
It's nuts. When we were at Sweetwater Guitar Fest, there was this kid who was like 17 who was he was sat down. He was as good as any player I've ever seen. It's like, all right, like it just he does his thing. Slash does his thing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, but the other I don't know. I enjoy talking to you, so just kind of stretching it out. But um, playing live, the other thing that has kind of blown me away is in the studio, you're almost allowed. This is how I take it. You're allowed more speed because there's more space. There's no room and stuff. Live, once you hit a certain threshold of fast playing, it's all the same. It's just like
Yeah.
it just went by. It's like, well, why am I trying to play at the 90th percentile of my ability, and it's not fun anymore? Like, oh, just take it down to where it's like, this is easy for me, this is fun for me. 99% of the audience goes, whoa, because I'm just trying to get an
Yeah.
emotional effect from the fast playing. I want it to go, ooh, a wave, like an orchestra, like when the string goes, and so the notes kind of half
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
matter. It's not, I can't do the Ingve stuff or Jason Becker and all that. So, I just want a whir there. I want the energy to come up so then I could come back down. And so, I mean, that's me. I'm just, I love the technical stuff. I'm always trying to add it, but it's hard for me to do. So, like,
Yeah.
just be you. And I think the people
Yeah.
that are listening are way more accepting than what we're accepting of what we're doing ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We are mad. I mean, there's things that we would say to ourselves that would be highly offensive if somebody else said to us.
Oh yeah.
Be like, "Are you shitting me? You just said that to me?"
Oh
Well,
yeah.
but yet we're willing to take shots at ourselves that that we would be highly upset if somebody
It's
said to ourselves.
constant battle. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I think I may have seen. Did you just post something not too long ago about you doing a thing on Instagram where you're playing somewhere?
Yeah. I started an 80s cover band with a bunch of
That's it.
buddies of mine.
That's it.
A drummer that I've been playing with since like fourth grade. I went to kindergarten with him, and we've been at school ever since. Um, we had a blast, and hadn't seen him for 15 years. I'm like, hey, you want to start a band? She said, yes, let's do this. And then a couple other dads and a kid from my son's college, amazing singer, this girl that's great. She sings musical theater. I'm like, you want to sing? Yes. So we all
Yeah,
just kind of get together and do 80s covers, which is
that's
the
awesome.
best. And I bring out a 412 and a 100-watt head and like, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah, I think that the thing that you have in spades that so many people don't have that you'll take with you to matter no matter where what the gig is just this innate baked in sense of what good tone is, and you know
Thanks.
how to, whether it's doing a YouTube thing or a live thing, you know what you're good at and you know how to deliver that tone, and that the beneficiary for the audience, or the audience that's the beneficiary plus your band, there's times that your band's got to be going, holy shit, that sounds fucking
Well,
amazing,
you
you
mentioned
know.
like the what we tell ourselves, even in this group of people that I'm the by far the most professional musician in this group, and I'm like,
Yeah,
they hate it. They hate playing. They hate it. And then after they're like, that was so good.
but
I'm
yeah,
like, oh, okay, thanks.
yeah, isn't that funny how we're tearing ourselves. Well, there was something along that lines. We had rehearsed for like 4 days back in August, and one of the guys that's a promoter keeps saying we need to get so and so that toured with Roger Waters or toured with Pink Floyd to come in and do like a special guest thing. And the more he kept saying that, the more I was like, yeah, I get that, but at the same time, we're killing this stuff. It sounds great, and I was like, so I felt like, yeah, I'm the least, recognizable name in the group. And then we were just having some cocktails in the evening, and the rest of the band spoke up when the guy started. And no, this guy's killing it. This is our ringer, So it made me feel like, but yeah, I mean, I started having, not that I couldn't do it, but this thing of I'm just not popular enough. My name is not big enough. It's like, in the end is can you do a good job? Can you
It just
not?
takes one person to
So
plant the seed, and that those dark thoughts grow so fast. They're like, what?
right, yeah, it's crazy. So
It's
anyway,
great talking to you, John. It's
yeah,
super fun.
yeah, man, yeah, super fun. I hope to catch you out at the
For sure.
NAM show in a couple
Yes,
weeks.
absolutely.
I'll see where you're going to be. I'm sure you'll be having a pretty hectic schedule, but I'll see if I can catch you at
I'm going
one
to
of the
try and hover
booths.
around the Friedman booth because he usually has fun booths over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I met him briefly at Gear Fest, probably 2019 at Sweetwater, but it was just, I mean, real briefly. So, and what's funny about him is that you're really good buddies, but he puts off a vibe that, and I'll edit this out, that if he doesn't know you, he could be a difficult person to
Oh,
approach.
100%. 100%. He's
Yeah,
definitely
just
Detroit.
a bit of
Um,
a
and
yeah,
the funny thing is, like, this is a Detroit characteristic. So obviously, it doesn't apply to everyone. Super like a New York like exterior, and if it all you have to do is like, hey, can you help? And they're like, what do you need? And they just help with everything. But that exterior is tough as
yeah,
nails. It is yeah,
yeah,
it's a bit intimidating sometimes, and I've seen it. Well, even on videos, sometimes I've done a video. I'm like, man, this is great. You go from the like I'm a genius to I'm the worst in a blink of an eye. Um, but I'm like, this is great. I send it to Dave, and you get one word text. Like, cool. Oh, that's it. That's it.
right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. But I knew some guys like that. When you get to know them, you realize they've got a heart of gold, but they also have this. And that was my first meeting with him. Was kind of like, okay, so,
Yeah.
and then it was he wasn't trying to be rude, but it's unfair to say at those kind of things you've got a million people playing guitar all
Yeah.
day, and he was probably just completely fried with all of his responsibilities. So I can't imagine working a Gear Fest or a NAMM show. That would
It's
probably
the
kill me.
same reason why like I'll go to a concert and they're like, "You want to go backstage and meet whoever?" Like, not really, because I'm the 40th person that day that's be like, "I love you so much, you've changed my life." They're like, don't care anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's tricky, especially the bigger, being ushered back to meet Dave from the Foo
Oh
Fighters or
yeah,
something. I can only imagine.
yeah, yeah. If this part is
But
off video,
yeah, yeah.
Lukather, his daughter is in school with my son, and they're in musical theater together. So they just finished a play and stuff. Um, she's an amazing singer. Never took a lesson, just opened her mouth in high school and was like, "Oh, look at this, I can sing." And we're like, "Well, of course you can, because your dad is an amazing singer." So Lukather was sitting behind me
Yeah, yeah.
at the last performance, and I was just like, "I got it." Like, it was so uncomfortable because my heroes, his knees are in my back, and I'm like,
Right.
"Hey, dude, how's it going?" And he was so nice, but it was like, all right. And I'd seen him around school for 2 years. I'm like, I'm not going to bother him. I just don't, I don't want to be that guy that's like, "Oh my God, I just, you remember when you did this? You're the best. I love you." So I try to keep it cool.
Yeah. I've been buddies with his guitar tech, John.
Oh,
He's also
I've
John
watched
for
his
a couple
YouTube stuff.
years.
He's killer.
Yeah, I did a rig rundown with him on stage at the one of the Ringo shows. We were playing the night before, and they played and I just happened to be in town that night. But anyway, long story short, uh, I had met Steve a couple times before, but he came out and just hung. You would think that we were long lost pals that hadn't seen each other for years and years, and just such a sweetheart of a
That's
guy.
my
So
experience too.
probably next to Gilmore, he's my he's my number two guy. It'd be Gilmore, and then Luke, and then maybe Joe Satriani. Those three are my big
I,
heroes of all
I
time.
mean, here's the funny thing, and back to Dave Friedman. I'm gonna go over to Dave's. I don't remember what I was bringing over there, but I'm like, "Hey man, I'm gonna go grab coffee. You want me to grab your coffee?" No reply. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm just gonna go over. So I walk in and there's a dude there. I'm like, "Okay, I'll just wait." And he turns around and it's Michael Landau, and he goes, "Michael." I was like, I just went white because I'm like, this is, Lukather and Landau are my guys. And I'm like, he just said my
Yeah,
name. That's really weird. Maybe he was saying his own name and saying like, "I'm Michael." But him too. Like, he was so sweet, and I thought from his outward persona, like, he doesn't really do interviews very often. And that I'm like, oh, he's not going to be nice, and I can't ask him about anything. So nice. I was like, amazing. And same with meeting
yeah,
Bob Bradshaw, like him especially. He has the outward curmudgeon kind
yeah,
of thing. So sweet. I mean, I guess it doesn't help that I'm constantly
yeah.
online telling everybody else that they should love these guys, but
Well, yeah, it's nice when you. It's especially nice when somebody is a hero that you would never have guessed would know your name knows your name.
yeah.
That's a very
I
sweet
run
thing.
too emotionally hot and dry and hot and cold to play that game too often. More often than not, I'll be like, nope, I don't even want to know. Just they're over there. I'll be able to sleep fine at night just knowing I saw them and that was cool.
But funny enough, as a result of all, I spent so much time doing this. I've had a real hunger to get better on the guitar that I used to live in Dallas and had a guitar school, and I didn't realize I was just right down the street from Noel Johnston. And so I've been checking out some of the stuff that he's been doing, and he's just a lovely guy. So right before you on season 10, it's John Petrucci, Noel Johnson, and
Oh,
then you.
amazing. Okay, it's this
Yeah,
is an interesting thing to me. you grow up in a normal childhood and stuff. You're like, oh, okay, everything is this, and you think um, that the superheroes that's bonkers talented people are one way, and then you meet them, and I think in some cases, like I've seen this with a lot of actors. You're like, oh, you were going to be a star no matter what you did. You have a thing that's just like
Yeah.
an attraction, that's like an energy that pulls people in, no matter what the scenario is. And Noel is, to me, he's an absolute genius. And his brain works at a genius level at all times, analyzing and remembering and
Yeah. Yeah.
capturing. It's so fascinating to me because I don't run across many people like that in a world where everyone calls everyone a genius. I really think he is at this level of like he's absolute genius level, and it's so nice to have people like that because
Yeah.
he has an emotion, but his brain is like an AI computer doing these things that no one else wants to do the math for and do the
Yeah.
musical math, and he's doing it, but he brings he's a beautiful person too and a great family guy and stuff.
Man, hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you in City of Angels in
Thank
a
you,
couple
John. I
weeks.
appreciate you. Thank you for letting me come on too. That's really awesome.
Oh man, what a pleasure's all
Well,
of
thanks, buddy.
ours.
Talk to you soon.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Guitar Hang podcast with Michael Nielsen. Special thanks to Michael, and be sure to check out Big Harry Guitars on YouTube and Big Harry Sounds for his work in guitar tone, sound design, and production. Links are in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves music and guitar. I'm John Stancorb. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Guitar Hang podcast.